Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Isaiah, the 33rd chapter, dealing with the judgment of God. And in this chapter is a great deal of things that are mentioned here by Isaiah, stemming from destructive judgment of the Heavenly Father, right, upon both the adversaries of Israel, Esau, Edom, okay, and ultimately the deliverance that the Lord is going to bring. Now, when you look into this chapter, around this time, I believe this is around the time where you still had the Assyrians as the dominant power in secular history at this time. And so oftentimes a lot of, commentaries would try to attribute a good portion of this chapter to the Assyrians and what they were doing at the time. Though, as you read on down, getting to the end of this, you see that it's really more so prophetic, right, to this time. And the main adversary here is really more pertinent to Esau, Edom, than it would be to the ancient Assyrians. Though some parts of this this chapter did apply to the deals, right, or the interaction between ancient Israel and ancient Assyria, but the bulk of it, I'd say, is more pertinent to now. So this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 33, verse 1. Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou wast not spoiled, and dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. Okay, and so this spoiler, which we know that right now, really, of all the heathens, of all the enemies, the one that fits this the best is Esau, Edom. Okay, and in particular, the way that they treated the God's chosen people, right, the Israelites. When you look at the history, especially now, and what they did, right, going from the captivity they put us in, and the treatment, it was really like even like almost an isolated hatred, right, that they bore towards Israel in coming to find wherever they dwelt, carrying them, rounding them up, and then bringing them to this foreign land here. Okay, so as it says here, woe unto thee that spoilest. When you go into this word spoilest, it's pretty much to destroy, to devastate, and thou wast not spoiled. So you're not doing this in the act of vengeance or in the act of righteous recompense, but more so you just being the aggressor, right, being an offender. And dealest treacherously, which goes into deceitful, crafty, and wicked ways, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. And they still do that to this day. In fact, they're at the height or the peak or the epic of their empire, built upon spoiling and treacherous dealings. And who bore most of the brunt of that? Israel. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled. And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they that deal treacherous, they shall deal treacherously with thee. Meaning when because they've been given an allotted time to rule, in which they would spoil and they would deal treacherously. But when that time is up, okay, and now they at the time when their wicked dealings are at an end, it's when that's going to be recompensed upon them. So now they're going to have to drink of that cup. They're going to be dealt treacherously with and spoiled, which can be done on the right hand side as well, and that's what they're going to experience in that captivity that they're going to be put in. Verse 2, and it's not going to be just them that are going to be feeling that judgment, these other nations as well, right, these heathen nations. Verse 2, O Lord Yahweh, be gracious unto us. We have waited for thee, right, and that's really what the elect are doing, right. They're waiting upon the Lord, trusting in the Lord, putting their faith in Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, and understanding that change and deliverance is going to come through the Lord. So the only way is to wait upon Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, wait upon his mercies, wait upon his judgment. But be thou their arm every morning, there meaning those that waited upon the Lord, and the arm meaning power or strength, Okay, so constantly be to them a defense, right? Be their strength. Our salvation also in time of trouble, right? Which is Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. They're starting with the Most High through Yahweh Shai, as his name is. He the deliverer, or he delivers, is going to bring salvation to his people, starting with the elect in the time of trouble. And then Jeremiah 30:7, it goes into that as well. Verse 3, at the noise of the tumult, the people fled. And this is Isaiah speaking here in terms of the reaction to the Lord, the tumult that is made by the Lord. All right, and that's going to be at his appearing, at his when he begins to start to bring judgment. So as it says, at the noise of the tumult, the people fled. At the lifting up of thyself, the nations were scattered. Now, what's interesting about this verse is fled and scattered are synonyms here, right? Meaning that people were so afraid upon seeing the Lord finally making himself known to bring judgment, right? They ran, they fled, they scattered. But now when you also go into the word scattered here, one of the definitions, aside from just to break or to beat or to shatter, is to pulverize, right? Or to, as it says, to be scattered. And when you look into the word pulverize, it says here to reduce to fine particles. So when you think about, and one visual is the movie War of the Worlds, when you think about those scenes where you have what the world knows as UFOs or UAPs flying in the skies, whether it's in the cartoons, animated movies, or real life movies, you'll see them shoot those laser beams, and the effect that the laser beams have on whoever gets hit or whatever gets hit is literally like to pulverize it, right? To completely, as it says, reduce it to fine particles. So it's just like poof, it's gone. And that is a visual that Ezra describes in the vision he saw, right? He said that when in 2nd Ezra 13, that there was gathered this innumerable multitude against the Lord, but all he saw was basically the laser beam charge from the Lord's chariot, and then fell down with violence upon the multitude, and all of a sudden it was just dust and smell of smoke. That is an example of them being pulverized. So along with the nations being afraid and fleeing, they're also, right, going to be pulverized when the Lord lifts up himself and starts to begin to bring that judgment upon the earth. Verse 4, and your spoil shall be gathered like the gathering of the caterpillar, which the word caterpillar there goes into locust. As the running to and fro of locusts shall he run upon them. And what this is saying is when this devil begins to go down, or when they go down, their riches and their spoil, they're going to be like a prey, and their spoil is going to be taken over. Like the visual here is like when you have locusts, because you know when locusts swarm and they're brought to your territory, they come in like an overwhelming force that just destroy all your crops, right? And it's like you can really do nothing about it. They cover the skies and they just get to work. And so you're just completely taken over. And that's what's going to be like when this devil goes down, a complete takeover. Verse 5, the Lord Yahweh is exalted. He that dwelleth, for he dwelleth on high. He hath filled Zion with judgment and righteousness. Right. So Isaiah sees the Lord brings judgment. Right. These nations are afraid. People are getting pulverized. Esau goes down. And then and he sees this glorification, right, this exaltation of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, as is rightfully so, and also the state of Israel, which is Zion here, in a condition of justice and righteousness and purity. Okay, and that is going to be the visual of the kingdom of heaven. Israel being in perfect righteousness, justice, purity, okay, and rulership. Verse 6, and wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times. And this is the wisdom and knowledge of Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai, what we call the truth. And and that's what's going to keep us stable. So thy times is the times preceding that peace, right? The times that come with the even starting now, but leading into the times of judgment, where you're going to need a great deal of acumen, right? You're going to need to make good, sound decisions on a dime, right? You're going to need to be able to be resolute. And that's going to come by way of that wisdom and knowledge that the Lord has blessed us with, to know certain things on a carnal level to do and not to do, but mainly things on a spiritual level to avoid, and things that we should do. And those are the things that are going to keep us stable in these times, which is also going to be, as it says, the strength of salvation. See, so the salvation is going to be the Lord delivering his elect, but to strengthen your chances of that you may actually gain that salvation, that's going to come by that wisdom and knowledge. As the scriptures say, that the words of the book, right, the scriptures are able to make thee wise unto salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And we treasure it because we understand its value. Verse 7, behold, their valiant ones shall cry without, the ambassadors of peace shall weep bitterly. And in this time, right, when Isaiah was prophesying this, remember, as we read in, I believe, the 30th chapter, how you had Israel at this time making or seeking peace through carnal alliances. And so they made some with Egypt, but also with Assyria, in that sense, hoping that by paying them a certain amount, okay, or trying to befriend them or pay even a greater deal of tribute to them, which Ahaz tried, that would spare them in the time of judgment, but failing to realize that whether it was the Assyrians or any other nation, the Lord is the one who puts it into their thoughts. Salaki, the Lord is the one who puts it into their thoughts, how they should come against Israel. So, as it says here, their valiant ones, right, being the mighty ones, shall cry, which is referring to Israel, shall cry without. The ambassadors of peace shall weep bitterly, because those at least back then, the peace that they try to procure would be broken, right? It would be disregarded. The highways lie waste, the wayfaring man ceaseth. Now, when you look at the territory of Palestine, or where Israel was, you had a couple of routes that would connect people that were south to the north and people that were north down south. So if you were in like Syria, or you were coming from Mesopotamia, or you were coming from Asia Minor, and you were trying to get to Egypt by land, you would have to go through Israel, but there were at least two main paths, the King's Highway being one of them, and the Way of the Sea, right, via Maris, if I'm pronouncing that right. So when these Assyrians came in there, having their campaign into the land, they blocked all of those, right, as they were taking over nearby cities before they got to Jerusalem. So by way of this, as it says, the highways were basically deserted, and the wayfaring man ceaseth. The wayfaring man are the travelers, those that are like passing through. So nobody was trying to get involved in that. As it says, the wayfaring man ceaseth. He hath broken the covenant. He hath despised the cities. He regardeth no man. Okay, and so that is basically what they did, and that's why it mentions the ambassadors of peace weeping bitterly, because whatever deal, whatever tribute they gave, it didn't hold when the Lord put that spirit upon them to ultimately come against Israel, right? So this was basically how it played out in terms of the historical account. But even in the applicable sense to Esau today, those that would be likened onto the ambassadors of peace here would be those of our people that try to consent right onto Esau, hoping that this devil would pardon or excuse them when whatever it is they come down with that they bring. Okay, but all those hopes, those agreements, those whatever it is that they try to make with the enemy is going to cease, because the Lord is going to be the one putting that spirit upon them to where they're going to despise, as it says, the cities and regard no man. One thing that comes to mind is Second Esdras, right? When it talks about them, the cities being troubled, right? It talks about them being like madmen, sparing none. And that's all going to happen again in this time. Verse 9, the earth mourneth and languisheth. Lebanon is ashamed and hewn down. Sharon is a wilderness. Now, these were regions in Palestine, either on the border or in Israel or just right around it. And Sharon, right, being one of those regions around, same as Bashan and Carmel. So as it says here, Sharon is like a wilderness, and Bashan and Carmel shake off their fruits. And what this is to signify is these were places that were known for having, resources or being fruitful, like Lebanon having those trees and cedars, right? Sharon being, a fruitful area similar to Bashan and Carmel, but those places now becoming but a fraction of what they were before by way of this judgment that the Lord is going to bring. Verse 10. So these were locations in ancient Israel, but the concept of places that were once known as suppliers of resources, whether it's raw materials, right? Whether it's food, all of those would basically cease. That's why it mentions Lebanon being ashamed and hewn down, right? Sharon becoming like a wilderness, and Bashan and Carmel shaking off their fruit. So the places that were known to produce these things would be reduced, right, to a very little fraction of what they were. And so that concept we know will happen now again in this time, where places that are looked to for resources are not going to have it. Verse 10, now will I rise, saith the Lord Yahweh. Now will I be exalted. Now will I lift up myself. Okay. And that's basically the time when the Lord begins to bring that judgment upon the earth. Okay. As he says here, now he's going to rise. Now he's going to be exalted. And how is he going to be exalted? Because when the Lord starts bringing this judgment, as is described as a time like never before, people are going to fear and recognize the power of the Heavenly Father, the God of the Hebrews, just like they did in ancient Egypt when he brought the destruction upon them. Because at that time, ancient Egypt was a major empire. So by the Lord plaguing them like that and bringing them down like that, the whole known world pretty much heard about it and feared. And the Lord is playing out that similar story now with this modern day Egypt, which is this power structure Esau has set up, being known all throughout the world. So when the Lord brings it down, he's going to be exalted in that. So as it says, now will I lift up myself, i.e. the day of the Lord. Ye shall conceive chaff. The ye here being the adversary, starting with Esau. Conceive chaff, meaning what's going to come of you is going to be like husk, which is, in other words, it's insignificant, it's nothing. Ye shall bring forth stubble. So the example here is likened onto a woman, right? Or a woman that conceives or brings forth, which is to birth. It's typically a baby, right? That's the value. So here it's saying like, you're going to be like a woman that is conceiving chaff or stubble, which is another way of saying chaff, meaning you're going to hold no value, right? What's going to come of you is going to be worthless. You're going to become worthless. Your breath as fire shall devour you, right? And so now as we go into the subsequent verses here, the Lord, Isaiah is describing the way the Lord is going to judge these adversaries as by fire. And as we keep on reading, you see that this isn't just a metaphorical description of them being destroyed, but rather they're literally going to be burned by fire. And that's why he uses the example that you're going to be like fire. You're going to be like something that is burned up, because that's what's going to happen in this time. And that's how we know that this applies now, okay, to Esau and these heathens. So as it says here, your breath as fire shall devour you, which is I wouldn't say ironic, but I say interesting, because they're the ones who are going to invent the weapons that are gonna use fire to basically destroy themselves. Verse 12, and the people shall be as the burnings of lime, as thorns, and that lime is what you get when you burn, I believe it's a limestone, and it takes a very, very high heat in order to burn that. But as it says here, the people are going to be as the burning of lime. So why make that comparison? Because when the ancient Assyrians were taken down, their people were like those that were slain by the sword, because that's what happened. It was through war. It was through conquest. So why would you compare that to burning lime, right? Or as it says, as thorns cut up, shall they be burned in the fire. You wouldn't describe an empire that's going down by way of another empire taking it down, right, and killing their inhabitants and overtaking their cities, to be like them being burned in the fire. So that's how you know that really what this is applying to is now where people are actually going to be like onto that burning of lime, or thorns that are burned in the fire. And that's going to manifest in this Third World War, when it gets so escalated that these nations start shooting their nuclear missiles, which have the capability to have this effect on people, upon each other. And in the midst of that, the Lord is going to, as he says, lift himself up, deliver his elect, and pulverize people as well in the midst of that. Verse 13, hear ye that are far off what I have done, and ye that are near acknowledge my might. So, right. So in other words, everybody is going to hear and see and know the power of the Lord when he brings this judgment to come to pass, both those that are near and those that are far off. Verse 14, the sinners of Zion are afraid. Fearfulness hath surprised the hypocrites, right? So the ungodly of our people, they're going to be afraid when they see this judgment come to pass. So all that hypocrisy, that folly, that wickedness is all going to immediately cease, and is going to be overtaken with a feeling of great fear. Who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with everlasting burnings? And that's basically the thoughts they're going to have, the fearful thoughts they're going to have, which is like, which one of us can survive this kind of destruction, right? Nobody can live with this extreme burning. Verse 15, and what that looks like in modern day is, like, even one example is, I saw this prank video where it was, you had these women, they were this family, they were sitting in their living room, and all of a sudden their TV switched to the emergency broadcast alert, and it was saying that nuclear missiles have been shot off. I think it said from Russia or so, and it was listing some of the cities that it was about to hit in a few minutes, and it listed the city that they were in. Of course, it was a prank, but they didn't know that, so they were all afraid. They started bugging out, started screaming, hugging each other, because in their mind, they're like, if nuclear missiles are coming over here, I might not know the technical details of it, but I know damn well it's not good, and more than likely we're not going to survive that, right? So that's the fear, that's the what's going to be going on through people's minds. Except in this time, you will not have the relief of being told, oh, it's just a prank, it's not real. This time your heart is going to be beating so fast, realizing that it is real, and having that reality check. When you feel the earth start shaking, you hear other parts being hit. You hear the loud sounds of the impact of the missiles hitting the earth, shaking the earth, until you start to feel that burning. Verse 15, he that walketh righteously and speaketh uprightly. So here there's this separation, right? There's the effect that this judgment is going to have upon the wicked, right? There's the effect it's going to have upon the wicked of Israel. And then there's the condition or the state that the righteous of Israel are going to be in, right? Which is what verse 15 is going into. So as it says, he that walketh righteously and speaketh uprightly. So you live a godly life after the ways that are pleasing to the Heavenly Father. He that despiseth the gain of oppressions. that shaketh his hands from holding of bribes. So in Isaiah's time, one that is exhibiting traits of righteousness is likened unto one who, as it says, despises the gain of oppression. So there were a lot of wicked princes and rulers that would align themselves with base men to enact oppressive measures in order to deprive the needy and the just from, righteous or fairness, right? In order to basically rob them. Okay, whether it's oh, you made a pledge for this, it's more than you can afford, now you got to give me this, all those kinds of wicked ways. So they that weren't down with those things like that despise that, which is gain of oppression, using your rule or your status to make gain off of people by oppressing them, that shaketh his hands from holding of bribes. So you don't accept bribes in order to pervert judgment. That stoppeth his ears from hearing of blood. So as where you had some that would be down and plan or devise schemes that may involve murderous activity so that they can gain whatever it is they're trying to gain, you would be like one that you weren't down with that, right? You didn't listen to that. You weren't giving heed to those things, and shutteth his eyes from seeing evil, right? So you basically discipline yourself from being enticed by these wicked ways. Now, I mentioned during Isaiah's time because he's describing like the behavior of the righteous with examples from what righteous men would have done in that situation. And we know now in this time, right, it would be the modern day equivalent would be you're living a pure and sincere life in the ways of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Okay, so right now, how that translates is you're being diligent, you're serving the Lord in your daily life. You're not, being like one way on camera when you're teaching, but another way when you're amongst yourself or people in the world being a demon, right? You're not selling out. Okay, you're not teaching vain things. Like you're doing the things that are required of you, not being corrupt in the ways of purity or being enticed to sin. Okay, that's the behavior of the righteous, i.e. the elect. And those that do that, verse 16, he shall dwell on high. His place of defense shall be the munitions of rocks. Now, dwelling on high, meaning first and foremost, right, that they're going to be exalted, right? They're going to be put in a high position. They're going to be, in a position of, as we know, according to prophecy, rulership. But also in a literal sense, those that are of the elect, when this destruction comes, in a literal sense, they're going to be on high in the chariots, pursuant to Revelation 15, that they may avoid or be protected from this destruction. So as it goes on to mention, his place of defense shall be the munition. The word munitions goes into like a fortress or stronghold of rocks, meaning that they're going to be completely protected. Bread shall be given him. His waters shall be sure. See, so they're going to be taken care of. They're going to be completely set, leading up into, that the time of being crowned with those crowns of righteousness that Yahweh Shai has promised them. Verse 17, thine eyes shall see the king in his beauty. And who is that king? Ultimately, it's Yahweh Shai, right? Was it the 32nd chapter? The first verse, Isaiah mentions that, right? Behold, a king shall reign in righteousness, and princes shall rule in judgment. So where were we? Verse 17, right? Thine eyes shall see the king in his beauty. And I want to get this quick precept here. I believe Job also mentioned that. Right, let me see. Behold his... let's add in here. Eyes. Should be in the book of Job. Redeemer. Let's try that. There we go. Job chapter 19, verse 25. For I know that my Redeemer liveth. Who is the Redeemer? Yahweh Shai. He is also that king. and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And those that talk about Yahushua not being mentioned in the Old Testament, who is Job referring to here? Because there's no other man that can redeem you. That's gonna, as it says here, that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. That's referring to Yahushua. Verse 26, and though after my skin worms destroyed his body, so when he dies, his flesh is going to be decomposed into the earth, yet in my flesh shall I see God. So Job is referring here to reincarnation, because he knew that, yes, in his current incarnation, he would die, his flesh would decompose, but in a future incarnation, he would be back on the earth again in a new body, and he would see and witness the glory of the Lord. Verse 27, whom I shall see for myself, and mine eyes shall behold, and not another, though my reins be consumed within me. You see that? So he's saying that I'm going to see him with my own very two eyes, not nobody else's. No, I'm going to see him with my own two eyes. Even though right now this body is going to die, I know that I'm going to be back again in that time, and I'm going to witness and see him. So going back to Isaiah 33, as it says, thine eye shall see the king in his beauty. That's referring to Yahushua, and the whole world is going to see him. They shall behold the land that is afar off. What land is that? That's the land of Israel. And why is it likened unto a land that is afar off? Because we have been taken out of that land. So how are they going to behold it? By being brought, right? By being gathered and sent back there. And that's in the book of Baruch. What is it? Let's see, I believe it's the 4th chapter. Let's get that real quick. Baruch 4, and around maybe 27. Let's see. There we go. The Baruch 4 and 36. O Jerusalem, look about thee toward the east, and behold the joy that cometh unto thee from God. Lo, thy sons come, whom thou sentest away. They come gathered together from the east to the west, because they were scattered all around, by the word of the Holy One, rejoicing in the glory of God. So they're going to be gathered and brought back to the land, which is also mentioned in Baruch, the 2nd chapter, and that's how they're going to be able to behold it. Verse 18, thine heart shall meditate terror. Where is the scribe? Where is the receiver? Where is he that counted the towers? And the heart meditating terror is like a couple of layers to this, right? There's one where, and when you look in the other translations, they have this as meditating terror in the sense of you're going to think upon the terrors that you had been through. Okay. For example, NLT, you will think back to this time of terror, though here we're not dealing with it's not dealing with the actual ancient Assyrians. NIV, in your thoughts, you will ponder the former terror, right? Where is the chief officer? Where is the one who took the revenue? Where is the officer in charge of the towers, right? And here the scribe, right, or those that would record the incidents that would be happening, the receiver, or in other words, the collector, who would collect tribute from us, and him that counted the towers were those that, I like the way it's worded in, what translation was it? Okay, NLT is fine, but there was another one. There we go, CSB, right? Where is the one who spied out our defenses? And so it's basically like, having now been delivered, and thinking back, you're no longer gonna have to see and deal with these heathen that came upon us and basically subjected us onto that terror. And then you have the other layer of the heart meditating terror, which and I say that because when you go into the word meditate, right, and terror, let me pull up terror and meditate. So here's the word, I think that was meditate. This might be terror. Yeah, so the word terror here is terror or dread, right? Horror. And when you go into the word meditate, as it says, to utter, to meditate, to devise or plot. So your heart meditating terror, it's in a sense plotting or devising that dread and that terror, Why? Because we were subjected to these things, and we know that the Lord is going to give us the ability and the power to be able to recompense that terror back upon those that inflicted it upon us. Okay, so that is the two versions of that. Okay, the one where you are thinking back upon the previous things you had to go through, but seeing you don't have to go through it anymore. But you have the other side of that, which is the actual meditating upon the the dread that they're going to be put through, having put us through that. Verse 19, though thou shalt not see a fierce people, a people of deeper speech than thou canst perceive, of a stammering tongue that thou canst not understand. And this is how the Lord likened the enemies he would bring against us, right? A people of fierce countenance, whose language we wouldn't understand, who wouldn't spare the old or the young. So here Isaiah is saying that you're no longer going to have to see or deal with them anymore. Because see, our language is the Hebrew. And when we were taken over by the various heathens that spoke different languages, we didn't understand it. They forced that upon us. But after we're delivered, we won't have to deal with these adversaries anymore. Verse 20, look upon Zion, the cities of our solemnities, right? And that our solemnities being like our festivities, our holy days, right? So look upon Zion, the city of our solemnities. Thine eyes shall see Jerusalem, a quiet habitation. So Isaiah is saying, like, look at Jerusalem now. The after all the troubles that we've been through, it's now this, as it says, this quiet habitation, as in, peace, quiet as in peace, right? A tabernacle that shall not be taken down, not one of the stakes thereof shall ever be removed. And so what that means or signifies is a sure foundation, right? It won't ever be taken over. It won't ever have to be subject to war. It won't ever be made afraid, nor its inhabitants. And the word stake here is like the nail of a tent, because a tabernacle is just a tent at the end of the day, right? It's a dwelling place, but in physicality, it's a tent. And so the example here of not one of the stakes thereof being removed, when you look here, I'll just pull up here an ancient, or I don't know if I typed in tabernacle. No, I think I just typed in here ancient tent. So something like this. When you look at this tent, those pegs or those pegs, those giant nails that they use to basically nail to keep the tent in place, that's that stake that's not going to be removed, right? So that means that the foundation is going to be sure. As it goes on to say here, not one of the stakes thereof shall ever be removed, neither shall any of the cords thereof be broken, right? And the cord is referring to this rope here that is used to connect or tie the tent to the stake to keep it in place and to keep it up. Okay, so he's using this example of like a tent that is sure, like it's stable, it's not moved, it doesn't break down, and he's using that to describe the state Jerusalem is going to be in, or the state Zion is going to be in, of being basically good, right, protected. Verse 21, but there the glorious Lord Yahweh will be unto us a place of broad rivers and streams. And the broad rivers and streams are a representation of protection, right? But also, just like refreshing, right? Resources, right? Like basically all the benefits that a broad stream would provide. And I say protection because that was an example of, you had mountains and you also had waters that were a natural protection. If you go and research the history on Tyre, the stronghold they had upon the water, there was a reason why it was very difficult for them to be taken down, because it was on the water. Okay, so they had that water as a defense for them, for any nations that try to besiege them. And so the Lord here, being the broad river and stream, is not only providing, resources and and everything else that streams provide, but also protection. Wherein shall go no galley with oars, and the galley is going into like ships or fleets, and the oars are like the paddles or whatever they use, the rows that they use to row. And this is just signifying that no enemy is going to come against us, right? But since he's using the example of streams, he uses, like ships or enemy ships. Neither shall gallant ships pass by. The gallant meaning like a mighty ship or a warship pass thereby to try and harm us, meaning we will be in a position to where no foes or adversaries would be able to come there or try to harm us, or anything of that sort. Verse 22, for the Lord Yahweh is our judge, the Lord Yahweh is our lawgiver, the Lord Yahweh is our king. He will save us. Thy tacklings are loosed. All right, once again, referring to our adversaries. Thy tacklings are, which starts with Esau, tacklings are loosed, that they could not strengthen their mast, which I believe the tacklings here are like if you look at, let's see, a ship, mast, and sail. Okay, so you have these cords, right, and these ropes here. Then you have this, I don't even know what to call it. Well, we'll just call it what it is, right? The mast, which are like the wooden, like stick looking things here. And then you have the sail, which is the actual flag looking, would call it a sail because it's hard to find another word for it. So you had those different parts. And since Isaiah is using the example or the metaphor of a ship, what he's likening here is they're likened, right? These foes, these adversaries, they're like a ship whose cords are loosed so that they can't properly keep in place the mast, which is this, right? This, as I showed earlier, there's a reason why these cables are attached to it to keep it in place. So they can't properly keep that in place. Therefore, they can spread their sail. And so they're like a ship that's out of control, all right, which eventually goes down. Then is the prey of a great spoil divided, right? Because once they go down, then whatever spoils they have and whoever it is that's taking them down or is nearby is gonna take that. It's gonna plunder that. So our enemies, starting with Esau, are gonna be likened onto this ship that is like broken up, and they've now become like a prey, right? Whose spoil, as it says, is divided. The lame take the prey. So meaning that even the least, all right, of our people, like even the lame man is going to partake in this victory of preying upon you. With that being said, let's take a look here. Okay, this is one example. NLT, the enemy's sails hang loose on broken masts with useless tackle. Their treasure will be divided by the people of God. Even the lame will take their share. So hopefully that gets the point across. Verse 24, the inhabitants shall not say, which is talking about Israelites, I am sick. The people that dwell therein shall be forgiven of their iniquity. And that's going to be the final state of Israel. That's why the scriptures say all Israel shall be saved, right? So ultimately, when all is said and done, we will not be in a position of, as it says, saying I am sick or, any infirmities or anything of that sort, right? But we're going to be in a joyous kingdom, forgiven of our iniquity and blessed of the Lord. And I'm going to finish it off with another translation of this. NLT, the people of Israel will no longer say we are sick and helpless, for the Lord Yahweh will forgive their sins. This is also echoed in Revelation, the 21st chapter. So with that brings us to the end of the book of Isaiah, the 33rd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rechak Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.